Hello coders, in second video we learn how to install Python in our system. So let's get started on how to install Python. For that you want to go to Google and type something like Python download. Or simply Python should also be good enough. Then the first result should be the official Python website. Click on that and then you can see a Python download button. At the moment the most recent version of Python is Python 3.12, which is what I'm going to use for this tutorial. If you click on that, it downloads start. Once this one is done, you can go to your downloads folder, double click on the Python symbol, and then you should get the install dialog. Before you click on install now, there's one really important thing you have to do, and that is to add python.x to path if you are on Windows. On Mac OS, this is happening automatically, but on Windows you have to make sure that you are adding Python to the path. That way a code editor could find the program and use it to run Python. If you are not ticking this box, you are going to have lots of errors, so make sure to tick it and then click on install. Now you can also customize the installation, but you don't really need to. Then you have to wait a few seconds, and after that you should have Python installed. Next up we have to get a code editor, and in my case I want to use Visual Studio Code or VS Code ins shorted. For that, go back to your search engine of choice and type in VS Code. Download. The first result should be what you need, and on that website you can choose your operating system. In my I am working on Windows, but obviously if you are on Mac OS, click on the Mac download button, click on the icon, and then you can install it like any other program. I would recommend to keep all the default options, but do make sure that you have the add to path ticked. That one does matter. After all of that is done, you can click on launch Visual Studio Code, which is what I want. Okay, once you've done that, you should see something like this. Now you don't really need to worry too much about the main window for now. What's more important is the left side panel. There you'll see a few icons that are much more important. For example, at the top we have the Explorer icon. It might also be called Files. In there you can see all of your open folders and files. Actually, while we're here, I want to open a new folder that I'm going to use for all of my files. Basically, what you want to do is create a new folder to store all of your code. In my case, it's for translation work. I already have a specific folder in mind, so let me paste its path here. I want to select the code folder, which is currently empty. With the folder selected, I'll click Select Folder. Now, if we click on Explorer again, we can see the code folder and that it's empty. To fix that, I'll right-click and create a new file. Let's name it setup.py so our computer knows it's a Python file. You'll also see a Python icon, a little snake, appear on the left side of the file. If I press enter, we can start writing some code. You can close the Welcome tab. At the bottom right, you can see it says Python. You could click on it to select another language, but I want to stick with Python. I'll write a simple Python line, print test. Make sure you spell everything correctly, as typos, parentheses, and quotation marks are crucial in programming. Now we have one line of Python code, but we need to figure out how to run it, which we can't do just yet. Look on the left side for the extensions icon. Click on it and you'll see a recommendation to install a Python extension for VS Code. If you don't see it, type Python in the search bar. It should be the first result. This is what we want to install. It's going to take a few seconds, and then we have Python installed. If you now go back to setup.py, in the top right you can see a run Python file symbol. If you click on that, you get a terminal, and in there we have test. This is the word we have just written inside of the print statement, and that is all that print does. It simply prints out a word, and with that we have some basic Python set up. Now you can customize VS Code quite a bit. For example, what is really popular is, I think this is called material icon. This is a purely visual extension at the moment. If you are looking at the Explorer, the Python symbol looks a bit boring, and for that, if you are installing material icon or any other theme, let me install material icon, and then you have to select an icon theme. Shetty is the default one, but I want to use material icon theme, so click on that, and now if you go back to the Explorer, the Python symbol now looks better. That's all that's happening in here. There are many more extensions you could be using, but to get started you don't really need any more. Also, you can close the tab with the extensions and the new welcome tab. We will not be needing any of those. However, what you might want to do is to customize a few more minor things, like the font size. For example, if you are watching all of this on a smartphone, the text is going to be really small. For that, you want to go to File, then to Preferences, and in there, we have Settings. If you click on that, you can customize basically anything inside of VS Code. For example, there we have the font size. You can set this one, for example, to 20. And if you press Ctrl+S to save, go back to Setup, you have much larger text. You can also use search settings and type in something like terminal font size. Usually, VS Code is very good with the search function. There we have integrated font size for the terminal. Let's change this one to maybe 20. And now we have much larger text. Could even be a bit larger. Let's say something like 24, that looks about right. Simply choose the number that you like. It's entirely up to you. These numbers are fairly subjective and also depend on your device. Simply play around with them and see what feels right. Now besides that, what you can also do, if you go back to File, Preferences, and there we have keyboard shortcuts. Those can be quite nice. For example, what I might want to do, instead of always clicking on the Execute or Run Python file, I want to bind this to a shortcut. And for that, you go to Keyboard Shortcuts, and then use the search function. I want to use a shortcut for Run Python file. And there we have the command. If you double remove time and right click on key binding, you can set a shortcut. In my case, I'm going to use Alt+A, which is a shortcut that isn't used by VS Code and is also very easy to use on your keyboard. If you now press enter, you can go back to setup.py. Instead of clicking on the symbol, you can. Let me close this. Actually, you can simply press Alt+A, and you get the same result. It makes the entire thing much faster to work with. Nearly done. The last thing that I want to cover is full screen mode, and the shortcut for that is a bit weird. If you go to View, there you have Appearance, and you can go to full screen or Zen mode. The shortcut for Zen mode is Ctrl+K, then you release the keys, and then the Z key. Or you can simply click on it, same result. But if you want to get out of it, you press Ctrl+K, then you release Ctrl, and then press Z. That way, you go back. The keyboard shortcut does take a bit of time to get used to, but once you do, it's actually quite nice. I am going to write most of my code in something like this. That way it's going to be quite a bit easier to focus on one thing at a time. But other than that, we can still run the code via the symbol, or we can press Ctrl+A, you are getting the same outcome. Also, what you can do, if you go back to File and Preferences, under Settings, you can customize the Zen mode quite a bit as well. For example, in my case, I don't really like the center layout. If I now go back to setup.py and go back to Zen mode, we have the code all the way on the left. And in settings, you could also hide the tabs. Those are the icons at the top to switch between files. Since I am mostly going to work with a single file, I am going to set this to none. That way, if I now go to setup and go back into Zen mode, we only have the one Python file. And that, I think at least to get started, is a really good setup. But once again, simply choose what you like the most. There's no universal answer for any of this. But anyway, with all of that, we have a setup of Python. So, next up, we can work on writing some actual Python logic. I'll see you there.